Hi. Welcome to our second attempt to do Through the Doorway. I'm your annoyed host, Tom.
And I'm Dana. Tom's in a bit of a bad mood. He had some computer issues. We uh we actually recorded this episode on Wiccan and Witchcraft last night with our other co-hosts. And then when we reviewed it, we realized we didn't have their portion of the sound, so we were going to end up having to re-record it. And then when he was looking at it to set everything up earlier today in preparation for tonight, Tom realized he was having a lot of computer issues where his computer kept blue screening him. So we just spent half the day fixing that.
Let me explain. It seems like every time I've tried to record this podcast in the past, after the original run, it's like the universe doesn't want me to do it. Because every time I've tried to do it, something goes wrong. And frankly, I am fed up with it. So I don't know what powers it be that keep interfering with me. They can effing bite me. The thing's gonna go on. I'm probably not gonna be talking too much right now because I'm exhausted. Also a little stressed out still.
Yeah, I'll be carrying a majority of this. Um we're probably going to post this one. It's Tom's not in any shape for us to re-record with the other co-host tonight. So me and him are just gonna. It might not even be as long as we normally keep them, but we're just gonna go a little bit into the two and the differences. And then, if our other co-host Loki maybe wants to do something more in depth in Wiccan and post it, we might do something like that. He is actually a practitioner of the Wiccan religion, so he would know a bit more about that than we would. Um, but we're gonna touch bases. We didn't want to leave you guys hanging. We already had to push this episode 2 weeks because of life and crap happening to begin with. We didn't want technical issues to be the reason we had to push it to a third week. So we're gonna start with witchcraft because that seems to be where Wiccan actually originated from. Most of our information on witchcraft is going to come from this book. It's called The Door to Witchcraft, A New Witch's Guide. It's about the history, traditions, and modern day spells. Um, let's see.
And
All right.
just in case anybody's wondering, with this background, yes, I drew all that.
Yeah, Tom draws all of our backgrounds. He puts a lot of effort into them, and that's another reason why he's usually a bit tired when it comes to the podcast because all the artwork and all the thumbnails, actually making sure the video gets recorded, uploading the video, adding music. He does all of that.
I'm not going to lie, as much as this is happening, I honestly don't feel like doing this podcast. I'm not going to lie, I'm going to be honest. Because it seems like something always interferes. I've just don't have any interest in this episode at this point. Maybe I'll be in a better mood next time, if there is a next time. I haven't decided on that yet, but anyway, I'll let you carry on.
Yep. We're not gonna go like as in depth. We're just gonna touch base on a couple of things, and then maybe we'll do a like a follow up episode later if we decide to actually get around to that. But we just wanted you guys to have some kind of content for this week.
I'd rather had my prostate examined than have to go through this hell.
So, a witch, by modern definition, is anyone who practices witchcraft. Witchcraft is not a religion, it is a craft, something that we do with our hands, our minds, and our energy. It's an empowering practice that any person can learn, cultivate, and personalize. It's about taking the raw, beautiful, and powerful forces of our world and using them to create change. So, not only does a witch, it's the word has taken on meaning to not only defines somebody who practices witchcraft, but apparently it has also come to symbolize those in our culture who are willing to stand strong for their beliefs, especially when it comes to human rights. There are apparently more people now stepping up and actually admitting that they are witches. Something else I found in this book that's really interesting, they actually have a little chart here. That is paganism versus Wicca versus witchcraft, and it actually goes into
I
like
knew a witch once.
like the bare bones.
Witch of Ferndale.
Yeah, we have this ongoing thing. His mother's best friend, she was a really nice woman named Rhonda, and he grew up calling her Aunt Rhonda. But the general joke was that Rhonda was a witch. So
The Wicked Witch of Ferndale.
his father would call her the Wicked Witch of Ferndale, and unfortunately, she passed away. It's been 2 years. Next week.
Actually, she was part of the reason I
Week after
became
next.
an ordained minister, if you remember.
Yeah, she was the whole basis on why he actually got ordained. You know, I was really sad when she passed away. It was our running commentary. We had to buy her birthday and Christmas gifts at Halloween time just so we could get her witch themed stuff. It was great.
Hey, it's better than what I used to do on the phone with her. She used to call the house, right? And it was something my dad started too, before we started calling her the Wicked Witch of Ferndale. She'd call the house, and I'd yell to my mother, "Satan's on the phone!" Yeah, well,
She'd show up and his father would ask where she parked her broom at. It was but yeah, this little chart, it gets down to the very bare basics of what exactly each of these are so that you can see what the difference is. Now, these three things are connected, but they do not always go hand in hand. The differences between the three, with paganism simply states what you are not. A pagan is defined as a person holding religious beliefs other than those of the main world religions. This is according to the Oxford English Dictionary. So a pagan is anyone who doesn't follow the teachings of Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, and Judaism. Anyone else, which or not, is a pagan. Now, my family was Baptist growing up. That was, I mean, if we had to identify, that's what I would identify us as. My father, on the other hand, now that I'm finally in touch and getting to know him, he apparently is a Catholic. And I know that Tom's family, he was raised as a Catholic. Catholic, ironically, is not one of them on this list. I think that kind of falls in with Christianity, though. They originated from the same.
they're not too different. They're sister religions.
Sister religions. So I guess you could say that Catholics fall into the same.
You know they're sisters because they don't like one another.
Yeah. So if I was in fact to identify as a Baptist, technically I would be a pagan by definition of what this book is saying. I actually don't prescribe to any specific religion. I believe that there's a higher power, but I'm not going to give that power a name. I believe mostly in like karma, you know, what goes around comes around, do unto others as you wish them to do unto you, that kind of thing. I just think that knowing that these apparent higher beings, higher powers, whatever exist, who's to say that what one religion worships as God isn't worshipped like the same entity but as a different name under another culture? Like I know the Middle East, they praise Allah. Farther to the Middle East, they praise Buddha. You know, so I mean, who's to say that this isn't just one deity and people just worship it differently?
They're all going to be upset when they learn that God's name's Hank and he sells propane for a living. King of the Hill joke. But you get what it.
So I'm not going to identify it. The fact I don't actually identify with a religion means I don't follow one of those six. So technically, if people were going to categorize me, they would categorize me as a pagan. Even those who follow Wicca, because it's not one of the 6 legitimate ones, they would technically be considered a pagan also. Even though that brings us to the next point. Wicca is a religion. That is one of the differences between the three. It is a religion based around pre-Christian traditions with hierarchies, rules, and a form of government. So basically, before religion really became a big thing, you had all these traditions. They had specific things, like they would do the summer solstice, the winter solstice, they would do Beltane. Those were basically all traditions. Most of them were in a way rituals.
There's a
And that's why I think
there's a graph in there that's the circle of the year or something
yeah,
like that.
we'll get to it.
Yeah.
But they are what they're really big in, like Wicca and witchcraft and paganism, and it's because those are the traditions that they based all 3 of these upon.
I wonder if there's an alcoholic beverage called a witch's brew. I could use that about now.
There actually is. I'm pretty sure it's in my Hocus Pocus cookbook.
I know I sound like I'm whining, but people need to understand it takes a lot out of me to get this show up and running.
The last one, witchcraft. Witchcraft is about what you do. Someone who practices witchcraft is a person who attempts to change and manipulate energy to their will. It then goes on to say, you can be all 3 of these things, none, or a unique combination that you choose. So, for example, a Christian witch is not Wiccan or pagan. Quite a few witches are non-theistic. Plus, there are Wiccans who worship without choosing to practice witchcraft. However you identify, figuring out how you best relate to these 3 worlds will save you a lot of time when choosing events, books, and other ways to curate your practice. So basically, some people just want to follow the traditions, and they could classify themselves as a pagan or a witch, depending on whether they want to do any kind of spells or anything. Wiccan, that is actually a religion. So if you are a Wiccan, you are saying, I do follow a religion. It's just more nature based.
I think I'll just identify as a toaster.
Um, a lot of them use like arbs, rituals, spell work. That's usually used when you're a witch, like practicing witchcraft. I do know that some of the Wicca actually involves that kind of stuff too, though, which is just one more way of which they're similar. A lot of them believe that there are incantations that you can use. A lot of it has to do with like phases of the moon. They believe that as the moon is in a specific phase, it leads more power to any spell or ritual that they might want to perform. Some people claim that they're like more sensitive to other people's energy. Let's see. There are a couple of different types of witch, apparently. You have a green witch. A green witch works primarily with nature and arbors. This category encompasses kitchen witches, hearth witches, garden witches, and arbor witches. These practices focus on using the power of plants and food to harness energy and create change. And that's one of the things when we looked at what it said a witch was. It's really big into actually using energy to create a change. A glam witch uses their abilities to draw attention either towards or away from themselves. This is ideal for seduction magic as well as blending in when it's needed. Glam witches all use the tools in their arsenal, such as colors, scents, and aesthetics, to manipulate how they are perceived. The next one is folk witches. A folk witch uses traditions that have been passed down through generations. This term can include family traditions, root work, voodoo, hoodoo, stragheria, brujeria, and other witchcraft practices. These practices are typically focused on practical witchery creating change in one's life and working with the spirits or ancestors around us. The next one is the traditional witches. A traditional witch follows structured paths such as Alexandrian Wicca or Gardnerian Wicca. These paths are considered religions, and they follow specific guidelines that are based on a lineage. This means that the traditions are handed down through generations of Wiccan priestesses like a magical family tree. This type of path is ideal for those who like ceremonial magic and prefer to be guided with structure and rules. Eclectic witches take what works for them and leaves what doesn't. They may love a ritual from a traditional religion while leaving behind other guidelines they don't like. This is ideal for witches who find power in exploring everything. So basically, they kind of pick and choose what they like from each one to create their own. And that's the same way, like earlier I said, to find out which type you are, you want to see what you like best and what works for you. And this, I guess, would be kind of the same way. The last type of witch is necromancers. A necromancer works with the dead and spirits. You'll find that witches from this group communicate with the dead and are skilled in divination practices. Their spell work typically revolves around assistance from the spirits. So that's definitely interesting. One of our previous episodes.
You missed a witch. The sand witch. There's different versions. There's pastrami, there's bologna, there's ham, there's turkey. And their main goal is to be delicious.
Okay, I'm sorry, I forgot them.
Right, you did.
So
damn owl.
We went through and we did an episode on the Salem witch trials before. And what's ironic is that witchcraft apparently was around long before any of that kind of prosecution actually took place. That was just when it really came to the notice and when people really started like publicly speaking about it and giving it names and terminology.
Witchcraft was around before the Bible.
Yes.
Matter of fact, there's references to witches in the Bible, if you really think about it.
There's a wheel. This is what Tom was talking about earlier. This is the Wheel of the Year.
You can hold it up a little closer.
It is,
there you go.
It's divided into basically two portions, winter and summer. I mean, I know we have 4 seasons, but they all kind of fall into one or the other category in this case. In the summer, right when winter turns to summer, so basically spring, you have Beltane, which usually happens in May. In the middle of June, you would have Midsummer. In August, you would have Lunasad, if I'm pronouncing that right. I know a lot of the times, like the G's and the H's tend to be silent. So it's really confusing when you're reading.
Do you want to hear how somebody with ADD would pronounce it? Lunashta is how we would say it. Because we see like the word almost like NASA in it and stuff like that. That's how we would pronounce it.
Maybe.
It's probably wrong, but that's how people with ADD are taught to do things.
In September, you have where autumn officially begins. And as summer moves to winter, basically at the very end of October, beginning of November, you've got Samhain, which is All Hallows Eve, Halloween, there's Day of the whatever, they've got all kinds of names for it, but that's what it is. Into winter, you of course in December you have Yule, which then became Christmas. In February you have Imbolc. March is when spring begins, and that leads you right back into the cycle back to Beltane.
The funny thing though is there's actually 2 cycles that are happening there when it comes to that circle. You realize that. Part of it is death, the other part is rebirth.
Yep.
But it's just like the 4 seasons, if you think about it, how I was how I explained it in the original episode was you had spring, which was the season of birth. You had summer, where things are fully
Fading.
grown. Well, it's fully grown at
Yeah,
that point.
they're
Then you had autumn or fall, where things have aged and have started to.
it's basically spring. They would be a newborn.
Yes.
They would be an adult in the summer. They would be considered an elder in the fall, and then in the winter they would die.
Yes.
And then start all over again.
Yes, that's pretty much how I would have explained.
Let's see if we can find.
Hmm.
So, like most other things, they have core values and beliefs. Most of it having to do with nature, manipulating the energy, not only from themselves but also from nature. Plants. There's good and evil. You can do healing. It's just a lot. They talk about how to access your power.
Don't mind me. I'm just
Meditation apparently is a
exhausted.
big thing. Willpower is a big thing. Reiki, which is a Japanese technique used to reduce stress, which I guess also helps with actually meditating and finding your center to use your own energy. And then, of course, there's scrying, which would be scrying, palm reading, card reading, such as tarot, all that kind of stuff, runes, tea leaves. These are all parts of divination, pendulums, Ouija boards. There's different ways of protecting yourself. There's talk of psychic abilities like clairvoyance. Some people claim to be able to have visions. Some people think that deja vu is a form of it. There's also a chapter in here about if you wanted, like, how to practice witchcraft, whether you wanted to form a coven or practice it solitary by yourself. It talks about the difference between solitary work and group spell work. It's got some red flags for that you should consider if you decide to join a coven. There's talk about traditions, rituals, and ceremonies, the calendars and the cycles. This is interesting though. There's a list for the days of the week and the way that witchcraft interprets them. So Sunday is called the Sun's Day. Some witches will use Sunday for celebrations or to seek joyous energy or for intensely positive spell work.
There's a cat between my legs.
Monday.
That sounded wrong.
I said the same thing a few minutes ago.
Uh,
Monday is called the Moon's Day. Some witches will use Monday to do spells that involve divination and astral work.
Tuesday is Taco Tuesday, and you're not going to tell me otherwise.
Tuesday is Tears Day.
Liar!
The ultimate day of justice.
It's
Some
Taco
witches will use
Tuesday.
this day to do work regarding court or matters of right and wrong. Others use it as a day of war.
I don't care what the book says, it's Taco Tuesday.
Wednesday is Odin's Day.
It's better than
Some
Hump
use
Day.
this day to appeal to the gods and participate in worshiping practices. Money and career spell work well on this day. Thursday is Thor's Day, a day of family. Some witches use this day to do spell work related to the hearth, home, and of course family. Friday is Freya's Day, the ultimate day for relationships and love spells. And then Saturday is Saturn's Day. This is the day to look up at the stars and do spell work to help with dreams, goals, and desires. So it's really interesting that a lot of that had to do with Norse mythology. And that shows you how long, witchcraft has been around. And that might even tell us that witchcraft could have potentially originated from over in, like, the Viking area. Nobody's exactly positive, I don't think, on exactly where it came up, because it's been around since before the Bible, before we were really recording a lot of this stuff. Most of it at that point was just passed down from family to family until they actually were in the age where they could start recording it.
Let go of my foot.
Leave your daddy alone, Yuki. Oh, there's a Luna down there too.
I don't get a break.
Let's see.
Oh, I need a vacation.
It goes into, when it comes to calendar, it goes into a bit about, like, what Beltane and the other things are. It tells you what some of a witch's favorite things to do during some of them are. It goes into the different moon cycles and how they can be effective, towards performing witchcraft. It talks about how to use altars, rituals, spell casting. Some witches believe that certain types of clothing are better than others to wear, like natural fibers and all that kind of stuff, nothing synthetic. Tools. Tools are something that they all pretty much have in common. Not really paganism, but witchcraft and Wicca both use tools. And I've actually noticed that a lot of these tools overlap. I think most of them, if not all of them, actually overlap. And that's how you can tell that Wicca really was derived from witchcraft. They just formed a religion out of it. They basically tweaked it to fit their own purposes. An athame or wand, they are meant to act as extensions of ourselves. We hold them to project and direct energy because they help the user visualize and imagine it. You've got the bell. Bells are meant to alert the spirits. The sharp vibrating ring transcends worlds and reaches whichever energies, gods, goddesses, or spirits we are trying to contact on the other side. You've got the broom. This one I think is pretty much specific to witchcraft. I'll have to wait till I get into the Wicca book to see. The broom is meant to help move energy around. Many witches do a home cleansing by sweeping their broom across the floor from left to right to remove negativity.
Isn't that just cleaning?
Basically. You've got candles. Candles are used not only to represent the element of fire in rituals, but also to send the intention of a spell into the air as it burns. They can be dressed, anointed, rolled in herbs, used to focus energy, or used as a light source while scrying. You've got cauldrons. Cast iron cauldrons are used as fireproof tools within spell work and rituals. These are great for burning paper, herbs, or incense.
Occasionally bodies.
They can also be used for offerings. You've got the chalice. Using a chalice is a way of differentiating the mundane from the magical. As a special cup specifically for use during rituals, a chalice holds sacred liquid to nourish guests or to present as an offering to the gods, goddesses, or spirits. Crystals are solid materials formed by the earth. Many witches use crystals to harness natural energy. Some wear them, some add them to spells, and some use them in grids to create energetic movements. Herbs and oils. They have double the benefit of having magical properties and medicinal properties. Make potions, elixirs, teas, and tinctures out of them.
Mm-hmm.
Magically, herbs can be used to create oils, charms, and other concoctions to move along spell work. You've got incense, which is burned during rituals, meditations, or just for the aromatherapy. Incense is used to create a meaningful and sacred place. Statues are used to represent figures like gods and goddesses in spell work, or even animals. A statue helps the witch capture the energy from the entity it represents. It goes into the different symbols, like the pentagram and pentacle, the triangle, alchemy, circle, knots, totems, sigils, Vives, and it tells you about what they're used for when it comes to witchcraft. You've got information on the gods and goddesses that most witchcraft base their practices on, names, alphabets. Apparently, witchcraft has its own alphabet called the Theban alphabet, and you can see here where they all have, like, in the book, and that was another way for them to kind of, in a way, code their own work, because if you didn't know the alphabet, you couldn't read anything. Apparently different colors have different symbolism and meaning to witchcraft. It's got a whole part about spells. Yeah, it's got a whole chapter about, like, spells you can perform. There's spells for love. It's got things about, like, quick passion candles as a spell. It tells you when the best time to perform the spell, the time to allot for the spell, where to perform the spell, like the best place to perform the spell. And then it actually has, like, a list of ingredients and tools you'll need and how to actually make this. So, I mean, if you were a kitchen witch, basically they're all about using the kitchen and basically manufacturing in a way.
For a minute, I thought you said kitchen something else.
So, I mean, anybody who wanted to start their own little business, some witches actually didn't really practice magic per se, especially when they got older and their own energies kind of waned. They would basically just they would make the things. They would make, like, the candles, and here's a charm for confidence and self-love, a sugar jar for sweet thoughts, love drawing oil. There's a candle ritual to draw love near to you, break up forward movement spell, attention drawing lustcraft oil, ritual for honoring yourself as a god or goddess. But there's ingredients and instructions on how to do these, and you could just as easily you can create this stuff and then you could sell it, and it would, because they believe mostly in nature, this is going to be, like, all natural herb and organic stuff. So it's not like it's synthesized in a lab or a warehouse, and it's not going to have all that other crap added to it. It's going to be, like, the basic thing. And so that's stuff that you can do. They've got things about health and healing. There's spells for promote health in a sick household. You can make a tonic for good health. Charm to promote physical healing. Spend a general spell for well-being and abundance. Pain release ritual. Moonglow oil. They've got ones for career, like success in your job, finding a job. Fast money drawing oil. There's just there's spells for friends and family. And this is all, there's even spiritual ones. Divination oil, protection. So it's really interesting. Like, the last whole, like, 2 or 3 chapters is all about spell work, and I could just as easily see people creating these and then selling them. It would actually be a very interesting market, because nowadays a lot of people are getting into wanting everything to be like, I mean, we've all seen how organic farmers markets and stores have become, like, super popular.
Yeah, and I can't eat at any of those.
Tom can't go in them or eat at them. He walks into the building and for some reason, like, gets sick, like, physically feels sick. And, we don't know if that's just his body's type, or, if it has
I'm
a
not
deeper
allowed
meaning.
to eat organic food.
But with him being diabetic and stuff, he's also not really supposed to have any of that. So he's got enough health issues that he can't really eat organic. But this kind of stuff, I could definitely see where some people would pay money for it. And because it's all handmade, you actually could charge a decent bit, and the ingredients shouldn't be super
I'm not
expensive
trying to
either.
be a buzzkill. I'm just exhausted. Don't mind me.
We're gonna put an end to the witchcraft now. We're gonna go discuss Wicca. And this book is where we're gonna be looking at you from. It's Wicca, a Modern Practitioner's Guide. The witchcraft book we actually purchased at a bookstore. This one I actually checked out from the local library. I am planning to buy my own copy of this because
Just so people know, we had a very hard time finding any books in a library about any of these topics. We actually had to go and buy.
I couldn't find a book
books
on like history and traditions of witchcraft. We actually had to go buy one. Not that I wouldn't have eventually bought one. Me and Tom are building a nice little collection of paranormal, supernatural books. This one we are planning to get our own copy. It's definitely an interesting book from the bit of it that we read through, and it's got some interesting recipes in this one as well. And this book, it goes into the origins of Wicca, practicing Wicca. It talks about sacred space for when you do your spells and rituals, what that sacred space is. It goes into about casting circles, spells and energy work. There's rituals. You've got simple rituals. You've got enriching rituals, crafting. You've got the sabbats, rites of passage, power of words in rituals, spiritual archetypes, drawing down and aspecting deities, growing as a Wiccan. But I'm just going to read this introduction to you guys. It says, Wicca is a beautiful spiritual path that celebrates life, nature, and balance. As a beginner on this path, you learn something new every day and experience new sensations and feelings as you explore your spirituality. As an intermediate Wiccan, you have reached a point where you want to know more to really understand the how and why behind each basic step. You are now ready to begin crafting your own ritual step by step so that they reflect your personal interpretation of the Wiccan practice. Excuse me a sec. That's your baby giving me issues under my foot. She just nibbled at the back of my legs.
They're both buttheads.
So, this book takes a fresh approach to this intermediate Wiccan learning. In this book, they'll do an in-depth look at the various elements of Wiccan practice and ritual, learn how to vary your practice, and challenge your existing notions of what Wicca is and what constitutes Wiccan traditions. Also explore simple and complex rites and reveal the inner workings of ritual to enhance celebration for every practitioner, whether you work or alone or in a group environment. So that is also something. With Wicca, just like with witchcraft, you can practice it either by yourself or in a group as a coven type setting. So, it is the origins of Wicca. It's inaccurate to say that Wicca is an ancient religion. Components and source material that combines to provide a base for Wicca may be of various vintages. That doesn't make the finished product old by association. And that is definitely true. It's like we said, they basically took all these traditions and they formed it into a religion. And just because the traditions themselves are old does not mean that Wicca is old. You know, you can't say, oh, well, Wicca's been around forever. No, sorry, but it hasn't. You know, that's you can't claim that. The traditions have been around potions, spells, that kind of thing have definitely been around for a long time, because like we've said, witchcraft has been around for centuries upon centuries. And so a lot of that being adapted into Wicca, those are ancient traditions, yes. Wicca itself, sorry if I'm stepping on people's toes, but it's not. It's not old by any standard of the word. Um, it says that Wicca can be compared to a mosaic made from chips of stone gathered from a ruined temple or historical site. Material is ancient and imbued with history, but the mosaic created with it is an original piece of work. There is nothing shameful about a modern religion, particularly a modern religion that embraces love and life and honors the past. And that is also very true. And that's essentially, I think, one of the reasons why Wicca was created. They didn't want these traditions to fade out and die. They wanted to honor their ancestors and history of the past, but they also wanted to be able to openly practice it and advance it as, you know, the modern age advanced. And I can definitely see that with everything I've learned about Wicca. It's definitely a very interesting thing. The roots of Wicca, as originally defined by British, Italian, and Northern Europe pre-Christian practices, probably honored a moon goddess and a hunter vegetation god. These roots centered on fertility, and specific practices such as celebrating festivals and holy days were based on traditional localized agricultural celebrations. The word Wicca has a variety of potential etymological sources, which with roots in Old English and German, as well as other Indo-European languages. Indo-European root word win or wick has been incorporated into several European languages, describe such things as magic and religion, sorcery and holiness, and bending and shaping. The Indo-European word wit or wid is sometimes pulled into the equation as well. For example, the Old English word witten means to know. Old German word woken means to practice witchcraft. And the word Weyhan of the same language means to consecrate. Old English word Wiccan, with one C, not two, means to blend. So the actual word Wicca is a variation of that the word Wicca with one C instead of two, which is an Old English word meaning a male practitioner of witchcraft. The female version is Wick, spelled with two C's and an E on the end. Later associated specifically with a female diviner. And there are different types of Wicca. You've got the Gardnerian Wicca, which it did speak about in the Witchcraft book. And this is the best known form of Wicca because of the publicity it generated in the mid-1950s. While Gardner claimed that it had been handed down whole, his new practice of Wicca actually included fragments of folk tradition, native British lore, Masonic and Rosicrucian elements, and practices taken from Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which was a 19th century occult order. So that's where they took bits of tradition and lore passed down. They mixed it with some other stuff from, you know, the locals, and they basically created their own thing. You've got Wiccan versus neo-pagan. Wicca has influenced the neo-pagan movement to such a degree that they have become almost synonymous. This is an error in this connection. Many people mistakenly assume that they are Wiccan when they are in fact neo-pagan. Many neo-pagans react negatively to identifying with the term Wicca out of frustration at the perpetual misunderstanding. So neo-paganism, as defined in this book by author Isaac Bonewitz, defines it as a general term for a variety of movements that attempt to recreate, revive, or continue what their founders believed to be the best aspects of the paleo-pagan ways of their ancestors. These were blended with modern humanistic, pluralistic, and inclusionary ideals, while attempting to eliminate inappropriate concepts, attitudes, and practices from the monotheistic, dualistic, and or non-theistic worldviews. So while Wicca is a neo-pagan path, it is certainly not the only neo-pagan path. Asatru, heathenry, druidry, and others also qualify as neo-pagan. This is simply one form of it. And the book goes on to talk to you about exploring traditional, the emergence of eclectic Wicca. So just like there were different types of witches, there's apparently different types of Wicca. You've got the traditional, where everything is basically handed down and there's rules and guideline, and then you've got the eclectic, where they kind of takes what worked for them and they leave what doesn't. Wicca also has tenets that they follow. So if you define that you practice as a Wicca, apparently you have to adhere to specific tenets regardless of whether you are eclectic or traditional. And the practice of Wicca is generally defined by the following tenets. The first tenet is a belief in a divine source that demonstrates both male and female energy. The second is adherence to an ethical code as outlined in the Wiccan Rede. So they also have a kind of a code of conduct, if you will, that you have to follow. The next one is the Wiccan mythos, and this is a series of allegories and stories that describe the lives of the goddesses and god. You have to, the next tenet is a tolerance for other spiritual paths and religion. And this basically says that the phrase, there is no one true way, is often heard in Wiccan communities. So even if you identify as a Wiccan, basically it's saying that you have to be tolerant of other people's religion, and you can't discriminate on people or claim that, oh, where their religion sucks, yours is the true religion. You know, you have to basically let people have their own thoughts and feelings based on whatever they believe. The next tenet is a belief in reincarnation and the afterlife, followed by a tenet for respect for nature. So that's that's definitely something. And basically it's all I've noticed it's all tenets are about, basically it's all about respecting yourself, respecting nature, respecting other people, their beliefs, the gods and goddesses, whatever it is that people believe in that came before.
Then how are there any Wiccans in this world now? Ain't nobody respect anybody anymore.
It's definitely fallen. There's a few people that still do. The book also goes into the pros and cons of working with a coven, pros and cons of working as either a solitary eclectic Wiccan. So sacred space, because you do the rituals and the spells, apparently a lot of them require large amounts of concentration, and therefore it makes sense to perform them in an area that is secure from distraction or interference. That is what a sacred space is.
I'll be right back.
Sure. So it talks about why you should use a sacred space, steps for creating it. This leads us into a couple of the recipes that are here in this book. And with Tom having so many medical ailments, some of these are definitely something I thought sounded interesting. The first recipe you come to is used for cleansing the physical. So it's used for cleansing your physical body. And it's a cleansing bath scrub. And a lot of these, like, I mean, you can actually get a lot of this at the grocery store. 2 teaspoons of lavender flowers, fresh or dried. That you might be a bit iffy to get at a grocery store, but you probably could actually find it in like a gardening store or somewhere. You need a lidded jar that will fit at least 2 cups of scrub mix, half a cup of sea salt, 1 cup of fine Epsom salt, a small glass bowl, half a cup of sweet almond or jojoba oil, 3 drops lavender essential oil, 3 drops frankincense essential oil, 1 teaspoon of lemon zest, fresh or dried, and a damp washcloth. Nothing there is particularly hard to get if you know where you need to go to get it. Most of it can actually be bought at a grocery store. A lot of the others you can actually buy any place that would sell like potpourri, or because that's essentially what potpourri is. It's flowers and things that have been dried out. So, and I mean, even then it says that for the lavender flowers, they could be fresh or they could be dried. It doesn't specify which one. Now, if they're dried, since you're making a scrub, that might, I think, work better because they would grind up better when you're putting it all together. But you've got for the cleansing bath scrub, you've got one for a cleansing wash. So of course we all know like what a body scrub is. The cleansing wash I think would be more of like kind of like a body gel, a body wash. And I mean that's really simple. Spring water, lemon juice, rose water, salt. That's it. Really simple, natural ingredients. You know, I could you've got purifying incense, things to do about purifying with a stone. It talks about how you can cast circles. You know, it's, I mean, it's just, it's very interesting. And, you know, I'm not really, like I said, I don't really prescribe to an actual religion, but it's definitely like, I mean, it's more involved than most religions now, but it's more about yourself than it is. And I mean, it goes into what a spell is when it comes to Wicca. It tells you why Wiccans cast spells, how spells works, the steps in spellcraft. So if you wanted to like make your own spells, it goes into how you can do that. How to center yourself, how to ground yourself, channel energy, sensing energy. You've got a lot of simple rituals such as purifying, banishing, consecrating, dedicating, and a lot of these have like incantations to them. And then of course you've got like the enriching rituals. It tells you how you can craft rituals. So, if you want to build your own, it tells you how to build your own ritual. You know, so that's another way of how you can go about like making it work for you. If you find that the ones listed don't really work for you, like you have a effect but not as big a one as you want, you can always tweak that to fit your own needs and either improve or create your own. And I mentioned sabbats earlier. So sabbats and esbats form the basic natural cyclic structure upon which the Wiccan practice is founded. By performing rituals to commemorate various points in these cycles, you can communicate with the cycles as they progress and with the associated energy as it shifts and transforms. So that's definitely interesting. It talks about common rites found in Sabbath rituals and, all this other stuff, how they coincide with things like Yule, the different holidays that they celebrate, which are basically the same as witchcraft. Beltane, Midsummer, Samhain, they celebrate the harvest. It talks into the different phases of the moon and how it coincides with Wicca. It even has like the naming of the different months of like how the moon is and what month you can find them in. Like in January in Old English you had the winter moon. In colonial America, that same moon for the month of January is apparently called the wolf moon. But the American Indians, namely the Cherokees, in that same month called it the cold moon. So, I mean, that's definitely kind of interesting. There was a part. Let me check the glossary real quick. I wanted to go over the tools and see how they differed.
They don't differ by much.
So 98. I'd pass them.
There's a staff or slash spear. The difference is when you mention the chalice or cup in this, it pretty much says it's the representation of the element of water.
Yeah.
So that's all it pretty much does. The tools are all practically the same, though.
So, the altar is a basic tool, and we did talk about altars when it came to witchcraft.
Mm-hmm.
The athame,
which of course
I
is like a
don't.
knife-like thing.
Yeah, it's essentially a small dagger.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas witchcraft had a wand listed, in Wicca it says the staff or spear. The cup, which would basically be the chalice. The pentacle, the altar. There's where you can talk doing a secondary altar. It's got minimalist altar setups. So one of the big differences, and I mean I'm sure it's not that big a difference. I just didn't see it touched upon really in the witchcraft book that we just went through. With Wiccan, they're big believers in what's called a book of shadows. And there's few records left by people who practiced the craft before the 20th century. What a book of shadows is, it's a large hand-bound book full of notes, diagrams, and secrets. These didn't really exist among folk practitioners through the ages, but they're becoming really popular. These are also called grimoires, books of shadows, spell books. Basically, it's a book of shadows. And some families, like I know, when you think of a society like, say, Harry Potter, you would think with a lot of those families, especially the ones who seem to be more important, like the Potters were apparently really important before the family basically died off down to Harry. Malfoy's always going on about his family and their importance, and they have the whole Wizengamot, whatever you call it. They had their
Loki has his own book of shadows.
They had like their own form of government where like some of them that had like the ancient noble houses had like seats, kind of like a house of lords almost. Each one of those families would have been important enough to probably have their own like family book or grimoire, which basically would have been a family book of shadows. The Charmed series, they have their book of shadows and that they keep up in the attic for whatever reason. Hocus Pocus, they had a book of shadows. You know, the one she always referred to as book when she was like calling it, trying to sing its name, whatever. Had that creepy eye on it. You know, but apparently, I mean, you see them all through history. You see people talk about,
Creepy eye.
yeah, you see people talk about books of shadows, spell books. Some people keep their own book. I know Loki practices and he keeps his own book of shadows. Um, but you also have to take into account that if you're in like a coven, chances are they're that would be more interesting. If I actually practiced Wicca or witchcraft and I was part of a coven, you might have a centralized book that the coven uses for like group casting. But I would at the same time myself probably want to take what I found interesting from that book and create my own personal book for use when I wasn't with the group. That would be me personally. Because if you only have the one book, it's kind of like it's a library book. You can't just check it out and keep it for however long. So it would make more sense, in my opinion, to
Welcome to the modern world where we have scanners.
Yeah, nowadays you have scanners. You can just scan stuff. But you can see, and I especially saw it going between the two books like that. They're basically the same thing when you really get down to it. At the very core, they have a lot of the same core values. They have a lot of the same core holidays, beliefs. It's just the way it's interpreted. And it makes sense that they're the same because Wicca is basically the religion formed from witchcraft.
I still don't care what you say, their Tuesdays are still Taco Tuesdays.
And even if you identify as Wicca, it doesn't mean you're not technically a witch. It just means that you're a witch who is saying that is your religion. You're not a Christian witch or a Catholic witch or a Buddhist witch or, whatever the 6 original religions were. It just means that you're traditionalist, you follow, and not even really a traditionalist, you could interpret it, take and pick what you want. It just means that some of the traditional values, if not all of them, but at least some of them, you're going to base your own beliefs off of, and you're following that as your religion instead of conforming to Christianity where you'd have to believe in God or whatever. So I mean, I thought it was all very interesting. I know you aren't feeling all that well, you have no energy, but what did you think?
I think I need a nap. But on topic, I mean, you see how Wicca and witchcraft can go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of similarities, but in the end, they are two separate things because they branch off.
Yeah, they did, like with witchcraft, I'm sure that some of them prefer having their own space. It wasn't really a necessity for them though. Whereas Wicca seems to go more in depth into the using of energy. And so I could see where for somebody like that practicing Wicca, they would need to have that space that they were talking about to like where they couldn't really have distractions. And especially now, modern days, God, if you're practicing but either witchcraft or Wicca, you might want to consider some kind of space because it's so easy nowadays to get sucked into like whatever. I mean, cell phones. Almost everybody has them, and everywhere, like when you're out, you see people like glued to their screens, and it's like, get a damn life.
I'm probably the only one you don't see glued to my screen. I only click on it to see what time it is.
But
I don't even use my phone.
Music, videos, games, they're all on cell phones now, and it's really hard to find people that don't have their
and I only use
face
my phone.
shoved in their
I only
electronics.
use my phone as a phone or as a clock. I do not use it to check email. I do not care about any of that crap. Hell, half the time if you call me, I don't answer the phone. Just because that's how I am.
I can definitely see the need for space though, because I mean you could have the biggest, most beautiful, spacious living room with plenty of clear space that you would want to do your like spells and rituals in, but if your radio or your TV is on, your attention is gone.
No, it only takes one person to fart to ruin it.
So, but yeah, I can definitely see where they all originated from basically the same place. I can see where they are mostly the same. I would say probably 75 to 80% of them is actually the exact same beliefs.
Pretty much.
It's just little things that they do differently.
Well, it's just like Catholics and Christians. It's practically the same belief, just a few changes.
It's evolution is what it is. Wicca evolved from witchcraft, so some of it is different, more modernized,
Oh,
up to
we're
date,
doing an episode
whatever.
on Pokemon. No?
But yeah, some of it differed and it branched off, and the other stayed the same, and it basically diverged into two separate paths. Neither one is more right than the other or better than the other, in my opinion, because they do still have that 75 to 80% core value that's the same. But they're definitely very interesting.
Thinking about starting a blogging series called Through the Drive-Thru. Where it's just me going through drive-thrus, filling my fat gut. Maybe.
Maybe.
Can you tell I'm kind of out of it?
Yeah.
Not gonna lie, I've had a hard time staying awake during this. I'm just exhausted.
Well, Tom is half asleep in his chair here. He really has no energy from dealing with his
I
computer all
know I
day.
haven't really talked much. I haven't been that amusing. But when you have as many medical issues as me, it's called I do what I can. So even though I'm not that amusing in this, you just gotta bear with me. I did a lot of hard work today to get everything up and running again.
We might see about doing another episode just to let Loki kind of have his say and explain some of the more in-depth Wiccan stuff to you. I didn't go a whole lot into the Wiccan because I would rather let him do that. He actually practices it. I think you might understand it a bit better if he tells it to you as somebody who actually does all of this. Like we said, we just didn't want you guys to not have any content again. So this, I know it's only like half of how long we normally have an episode, but at least it gives you some stuff to think on. And if you have any questions or comments that you'd like us to answer when we do our follow-up, that's something we can do too. On that note, this video is supposed to be posted tomorrow, so we should definitely end it here. That way we can get any minor editing to it done and get it ready for tomorrow. I am going to try to get us to get a couple of things filmed, even if it's just some short things. Tom might not be in all of them, depending on how he feels. I might do a couple of them just myself, like maybe skimming through some of our paranormal books and talking about a couple of things I find interesting. But we want to try and get some stuff done so that you guys can get more content. And even if it's multiple like 30 to 40-minute videos of just me like going through some stuff, it's stuff I can pre-record before I start my new job the beginning of next month. I've got about a week and a half. Well, not even a week and a half. I've got like a week and 3 days until I start my new job. So I'm going to try to help get as much content prepared for you guys, because once I start the job and I'm like learning all my new job duties, it's I might be pulled a little thin, and I don't want you guys to basically not get the content you deserve because I'm too busy to put in my full effort of help. But we are going to leave it here. Hopefully you guys found it interesting and you learned something. We will get together with Loki and Courtney and maybe have either him record something that we can upload, or do a second episode about this where he can go more in depth into the Wiccan practices, give you guys some more information on that. And I guess we will see you guys next time.
Oh, right. So I guess until next time, we will see you through the doorway. I'm gonna go take a nap.
Yep, he's gonna go take a nap and I'm gonna go make some dinner. So, have a nice weekend, everybody, and we will see you next time.